You're listening to the Jabadoo Education Podcast, where you will be introduced to education's biggest leaders to bring you some meaningful conversations, perspectives, strategies, concepts, and more, so you can be the catalyst of progress your students and our world needs. This is Jabadoo. What's going on, teachers and educators? And thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Jabadoo Education Podcast. Today, I am sitting down with me. I've decided that the first Monday of each month, I am going to just dedicate to me. I mean, not dedicate to me, but allow myself the opportunity to come at you with a solo episode, really because one, it's going to help me hopefully become a better speaker. And two, I think, after I'm entering my 7th year of teaching, so I certainly don't know it all, but there are some things that I feel like I do pretty well. And especially if you are just starting out your careers, hopefully I can give you some advice and some information that is beneficial for you. And today, for my first solo episode that I'm actually titling or that I'm actually giving a number to. So this is going to be show 52. So as always, you can always find the show notes if you go to jabadoo.com/show52. But today I'm talking to you about personal finance. This is something that in the last, I don't know, say 3 or 4 years, I've really just started to dive into a lot more, become a little obsessive about, because it's one of those things that is not taught explicitly. At least I did not experience it. I know that there are a lot of people in my generation and generations prior and generations after who say we don't learn this very well in K-12 and at the university and collegiate levels as well. And so I wanted to come at you again. I'm a music teacher, right? So I'm not a financial professional. Everything that I'm going to be sharing on this episode is stuff that I have learned from other people, right? And this is kind of just a way that I've pulled together a lot of information and I'm presenting it hopefully in one spot that is meaningful for you guys. So, like I said, this is episode 52. So everything that I chat about on this episode can be found on our show notes page. If you go to jabadoo.com/show52, that's where you will find the links to everything that we talk about. I've actually got some visuals that I'm going to put up there on the show notes page. So I have visuals. That's another thing, right? So I am recording this not just as an audio file for those of you listening on podcast platform, but I'm also recording a video here. So if you want to check out this video, go check out our YouTube page. You can go to that by going to jabadoo.com/TV, and that's going to redirect you over to our YouTube page. But like I said, we will have the link to this on the show notes as well. So let's dive into this. So I'm in the state of Pennsylvania, and I think one of the things, so I taught in Colorado for 3 years and then I moved back. And when I moved back to the state, according to the state of Pennsylvania, I was a first-year teacher again. And when I got my first job in public education, I basically became part of the pension plan that's in the state of Pennsylvania. And if you're listening in a state that doesn't have a pension plan, then obviously that's not going to mean anything to you. But I was given 2 options. And as a quote unquote first year teacher, I had to make this decision that's going to stick with me the rest of my career in terms of which retirement do I want through the state pension. And when I realized that I was making that decision that early, I was kind of like, where did this come from? Like, why am I even deciding this right now? How important is that? And so that's kind of what I would say springboarded me onto this financial security and just personal finance journey for myself. So let's get into this. So I'm going to start with anything like a good teacher should. I am going to pull up my visuals here for you. So like I said, I would love for you to hop over and check these out. So like a good teacher, I am starting with an essential question, which is, what do you need to know in order to be financially secure? And to me, that was a lot. I needed to know a lot, right? And I say that because 60%, this is a study that came out of the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. A study showed that 60% of Americans are spending more or all of what they have. Or more, all or more of what they make is being spent, which obviously shows you that 60% of Americans either have no savings or are in debt, which is just insane, right? And that's part of the problem, part of what we aren't teaching, I guess, in school. But the good news is that that same study says if you create a budget and you just create a plan, you're twice as likely to stay below budget just by having that plan. So my suggestion then is to start with a plan. And if you ever read any of Jim Rohn's books, he's a fantastic author, very well known, but he's got this concept of, it's called the 70-10-10-10 rule. And basically what that says is 70% of your income is going to go towards spending, right? It's towards your housing costs, your food, your transportation, all that stuff that we need to spend money on. If you budget so that 70% of your money goes to that, 10% of it goes into savings, and that's savings / retirement, right? One and the same. And then 10% goes to investments. So if you set up an investment account and you're doing stocks, or you've got other things that you want to invest in, and then the last 10% of your budget should go towards giving. And basically the psychology behind that is there's a lot of research that goes into this as well. But if you that 10% is a kind of a magical number, because it's even though you're giving money away, like if you believe in karma, it's coming back to you as well, right? And there's just a lot about that. So 70-10-10-10 is a good rule of thumb to stick to. Now, personally, me and my wife, we don't quite give 10%. We don't quite save 10%, and we don't quite invest 10%. But we're working towards that. And the reason I bring that up is it's so much easier if you are just coming out of college. It is so much easier to start with this plan than it is to try to work yourself back into this after you've already been used to spending 90 to 100% of your money, right? So start with a plan. That's rule number one. Dave Ramsey is another big name in personal finance, and he's got his 7 baby steps to kind of lead you to financial security. Okay. He says, step 1, for those of you who are just listening to audio, again, step 1 is to save $1,000, and set that aside. That is your emergency fund for all the things that life throws at you that you can't cover in your budget, right? It happens. Okay. So if you are spending everything that you've got, make a plan to put away at least $1,000 in your savings account. Step 2 then is to really work on paying off your debts. Okay. Especially credit card debt. Credit card debt is such a drain on your personal finance because the interest rates are just insane. So if you are holding on to any sort of credit card debt month after month after month, that is priority numero uno. Okay. Get rid of that. And again, you can look up Dave Ramsey. We'll link to it in the show notes. He's got this concept called a snowball, which basically says if you've got, I don't know, 5 loans, right? If you've got a couple student loans, you've got a credit card, you've got a car. Okay. Let's just say that as an example. Okay. The snowball is really focus in on one of those debts. Okay. Once you pay off that debt, the money that you were putting towards that debt, now roll that in and start paying extra. So if the debt that you're paying off, your required payment was $150 a month, take that $150 a month and don't add it to your spending category. Move that over to another debt that you have so that you can pay that second debt off faster. And then it just replicates, right? Once you pay off that second debt, which you might now be putting $300 a month towards it, then those $300 gets shifted over to the third one, and it just kind of snowballs, which is why, what a great name for it. So check that out. That is something that is just super, super beneficial. Step 3 in these baby steps is to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. So that, again, that kind of just puts a larger buffer into your emergency funds. And then after that, he says, start investing 15% of your money into your retirement. Okay. So 5, 6, and 7 are save for your children's college, pay off your mortgage, and then build wealth and give that money away. Again, going back to that giving becomes so important. But today, after you get through those first 3 steps, it's that invest 15%. That's kind of what I want to dive into. And so the reason this is such a revelation for me is that, it's kind of just drilled into us, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, come out, get a good job, and then save, 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 save. Right? That, at least for me, that's kind of what was drilled into us as a population. But saving is not the word that should have been used, because just saving money by itself is actually going to lose you money over time if you look at it. And here's why. According to the FDIC, the national average interest rate on savings accounts in the United States right now is 0.09%. That is the average interest rate, meaning if you keep your money in a savings account at a bank, you might see this after every quarter, you might earn 18 cents, or you might earn 5 cents on the money that you put in there. It is stupid low. Okay, so at 0.09%, that means for every $1,000 in your account, you get a whopping 9 cents for that $1,000. The reason this is a problem is the average inflation rate of money in the US is 2.3%, which means your money in your savings account is not keeping up with the value of that money that can be used to buy things and used for other purposes. So over time, money that is just sitting in a savings account is losing value compared to if it is used and what that can be over the couple of years, right? Okay, so that is something that when I learned that, I was like, oh my goodness, the math behind that is just, it was never taught. And for some reason that was insane to me. Okay, which is why, savings rates are it's a joke, really. It kind of is. Okay, so here, just to give you a picture. Okay, let's say that you put $1,000 in a savings account and you just let it sit for 30 years. After 30 years, based on a 0.09% interest rate, after 30 years, that $1,000 will turn into roughly $1,027. After 30 years, you've made about $27 on that money. Again, the inflation rate, talking about the value of the dollar. If you average that at 2.3, that $1,000 in 30 years is the same as having, in 30 years, having $1,933 is going to be the value of that. And you're saying, oh, the value went up. No, it didn't. It went down. Basically, what it's saying is that today, if you purchase something that's $1,000, in 30 years, you can expect that that same item is going to cost you $1,933. Okay, so if I just took that money and for example, let's just use TV. It's an expensive TV, but let's just say you bought a TV for $1,000 today. Okay, if you put that $1,000 in a bank account and you try to buy a TV in 30 years with that same money, you won't be able to. And that's the problem, right? So this concept of investing is something new to me. And this quadrant that I'm going to talk about, this comes out of a very popular book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Again, we will have links to all of these in the show notes page. But this cash flow quadrant is basically saying these are four of the main ways that you can generate money in the United States, or I mean, anywhere, but specifically talking about the United States. Okay, so you can, 4 different ways, right? So the first way is as an employee, and that's, I don't know what the statistic is, probably 90% of the country is an employee, right? The second way is so employees, you trade your time for a paycheck. Okay, and you can say, oh, well, I'm on salary, so not really, but yeah, you are, right? You can do, X amount of work, you can do 2X amount of work. The salary is still the same, right? So it's your time that you're trading for money. If you are self-employed, that's the second way that you can make money. Self-employed people, they trade projects for money. So if you are a carpenter, right, you say, yeah, I can get you those cabinets for $600. Doesn't matter how long it takes you to make those cabinets. That's what you're trading. So you're trading a project for money. If you are self-employed and you grow it into a business where it's not just you, right? When you have a business, you as the head of the business can walk away from that business for a couple of weeks maybe, and that business still continues to run, right? So now all of a sudden, it's not even your work. It's not even your time that goes into the generation of the money because the business can run on its own, which means you're not even involved in the day-to-day anymore. So your time is not even a factor in this anymore. And then the last way is investing. And investing basically says, instead of using my time and talents and skills to create money, I'm just going to use my money to create money. Okay. And that last quadrant is what we're talking about here. So what is investing? This is something that I think we use the term investing a little too loosely, because we kind of say, oh, well, that sounds like a pretty good investment. And sometimes it is, but sometimes the idea of you investing in something isn't really true. So investing is a way to create, or excuse me, is a way to increase the amount of money you have by putting it into a financial product. Okay, so the examples of this might be a bank account, a market money account, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, precious metals, property, X, Y, and Z. Okay, anything that has the potential to increase in value is an investment. Now, some people say, when you get your first job, you should go buy a brand new car. That's a good investment. Well, what happens to the value of a car in the first 3 years? It never goes up. It always goes down, right? If you buy a car for $15,000 and it's brand new, 3 years later, that car is worth, I don't know, $8,000, $9,000. That did not increase in value. So that's not a good investment, right? You want to think about ways that your money is actually going to grow. And one of the ways to figure this out is through your net worth. This is another term that I did not learn about. I didn't hear my parents talk about it. I don't even know how to calculate it. But basically, the way that you calculate your net worth is your total assets versus or minus your total debts. Okay. Again, assets are things that hold value, that increase in value. So bank accounts, retirement accounts, homes, historically increase in value over time. Okay. Debts include things like your student loans, your car loans, your credit cards, and anything else that you owe money on. Okay. So if you subtract the value of your total assets minus the value of your total debts, you get your net worth. And it's still negative. Oh, it's so annoying, but it is, right? And a lot of us who are beginning our careers, we've got student loans, we've got car loans, we've got all these things that we were told is a good idea to go get. We'll see, maybe not. But let's talk about these investments now. So I'm going to be talking about 3 different types of investments that I've really kind of dove in personally on. Okay. That's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Okay. And now even I have looked a lot more into ETFs, which is exchange traded funds. And exchange traded funds are kind of like mutual funds that trade like stocks. Okay. But we're going to dive into these first 3, the stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You can purchase precious metals. You can purchase real estate. You can purchase other commodities. There's even currency trading that you can get into, a lot of different vehicles. But the reason we talk about investing it's because of this concept called compound interest. Okay. Compound interest is this magical thing that happens when your money just sits in an investment vehicle. Okay. So if you've never heard this story, it's one of those crazy things that just, you don't think that it's possible, but it is. So the fable of the doubling penny goes like this, roughly. There's different ways that you can say it, but roughly it goes like this. There's an elderly man on his deathbed, and he calls his 2 sons to his side, and he says, guys, I'm not going to be around much longer. I've made my fair share of money, but I want to start giving some of it back to you. And so he gives his sons 2 options. He says, either I can give you $1 million right now, or I can give you a single cent that will double for the next 31 days. And immediately the first son is like, oh my goodness, give me the $1 million. Let me take that right now. Holy cow. And he takes the $1 million and he hires a financial planner, and they go through and they track the markets and they do everything that they need to do. And after 30 days, he comes back and he says, look, Dad, I took your $1 million and I turned it into $2 million. Okay. But the other son took the penny that's going to double once a day for 30 days. And what happens after those 30 days with a doubling penny is that penny at the end of 30 days is worth more than the $2 million that the other son wrote, or that the other son made. And if you think that's insane, let me show you. So I'm going to hop over here to, this is a simple compound interest calculator that I made. Okay. And let me show you this. So on day one, here's what it looks like. On day one, you have 1 cent. Let's fast forward on day 5. Well, let me go through it. So you've got 1 cent, then 2, and then 4, and then 8, 16, 32, 64. And on day 8, you have a whopping $1.28. Let's keep going. $2.56, $5.12, $10.24, $20.48, $40.96, $81.92, $1.63, $3.27, $6.55, and on day 18, you have $1,300. You're almost 2/3 of the way through the month. $1,300. Then it's $2,600, then $52, then $10,000, $20,000, $41,000, $83,000, $167. On day 26, you have $335,000 because everything's been doubling. So on day 26, 335, 27 is 671. Day 28, you've broken $1 million, $1.3 million. 29 is 2.6, and day 30 is $5.3 million. And again, you can do the math yourself. That's how it works out. After 30 days, you have $5.3 million on something that has doubled. Now, that is an investment rate of 100%. That is a 100% return on your investment, which is non-existent. Okay, that does not happen, but it shows you the power of this idea of this compound interest. So let me now give you a real life example. So if you were to go to a bank account, or if you were to go and create an investment account at the age of 25, and you just put $1,000 in that investment account and you just let that sit, let's say it's a mutual fund. Okay. The average interest rate of the US stock market is between 8 and 12%. So if you just flat out say 10% interest, roughly, if you let $1,000 sit, after 30 years, you have a whopping 30, or excuse me, this is 35 years. You have $30,000 just by letting that $1,000 sit in an investment account. Now, if you can do this, if you are a first-year teacher or you are just starting out and you can swing putting in $6,000 a year, which is $500 a month. Okay, that's not insignificant. I know that is a chunk of change. But if you can do that at the age of 25 and you do that for 7 years and then you just let it sit, you don't touch it anymore. When you get to the age of 60, you have almost $1 million in that investment account through compound interest. And again, if you are listening to this and you're saying, how is this possible? I've got the calculator in front of me on the screen right now. You can check it out. Okay. And I will also put a link to this calculator. If you want to play around with these numbers, I've made this editable. I think that's a word. Okay. Go check this out. Play around with it for yourself. You can change the interest rate. You can change your contributions. Here you've got an example of somebody who puts in $100 a month, which is $1,200 a year for a couple of years, then $200 and $300 and $400 still ends up being the same as the person who just put in $500 right away. Okay. Now, if you wait until you're 32 years old, which is the average age that most people start investing, if you wait until you're 32 and then you start putting $500 a month, it's going to take you until you retire to hit that almost $1 million. So this just shows you how important it is to start now. Wherever you are right now. If you haven't started investing, start now. Okay. Figure out a way to at least put a couple $100 a year, a month, whatever you can afford, because your future self is going to thank you for it. Okay. So let me go back to these slides now. And hopefully you see that the power of that compound interest. And I invite you to take out your calculator on your phone and try that. I meant to say that earlier, but we're just going to move through that now. So how do you leverage this compound interest? How do you leverage this idea? Okay. There are, I'm going to speak about teachers in Pennsylvania here for a second. Our retirement options is the pension. Okay. If you don't have a pension, you can still do general investment options. Okay. So those general investments options, I said them earlier, are stocks, bonds, mutual funds is kind of what I'm going to dive into. So a stock is a portion of a company. That's essentially what it is. Okay. There's two different strategies to this. You can either purchase stock in a company that you think is going to double in the next 6 months, and then you sell that, and that's short term, growth oriented. Or you can say, I'm going to invest in stock of a company that has been around for forever, and I believe they're going to be around for forever. Okay. The pros and cons of that. So the pros of stocks is that sometimes you can get dividend payments, which means you're actually making money every quarter, usually from the money that you've given that company through purchasing of their stocks. And then the other pro is that these stocks increase in value over the couple of years. Okay. But the con is that if the company goes under, you're kind of SOL. I mean, sometimes there are stock buyouts and stuff like this, but for the most part, it's no bueno. Okay. Another investment opportunity is bonds. And bonds are essentially loans to companies or municipalities or governments with the expectation that they're going to pay them back in a certain number of years after the bond is what we call matured. Okay. And usually these bonds are put out to raise money for certain projects. So if a government needs to build a bridge or they're funding a war effort, they'll often sell stocks with the belief that over 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, that they will pay you back your money plus whatever interest you decided or whatever interest they were offering. Okay. So a lot of pros and cons for this. Pro is that, on a bond, there's no income tax on interest if it's a U.S. Treasury bond, which is just kind of cool that you don't have to pay tax on the interest. They're considered a safer investment than stocks because there's really, they tell you exactly what your money is going to be in 20 years, as long as the bond goes through and as long as the government or the company doesn't go under in the meantime. And hopefully our U.S. government treasury bonds don't go under in the next 20 years. But the con of this is that if you purchase a bond, then your money is basically tied up in that bond until it matures, right? So it's really hard to access that money because you don't get the benefits until it's an X number of years have passed. So that's definitely a con. The last one is probably the most common way that your general individual throughout the country invests, and that is through mutual funds. And these are often considered the easy road to investing because they combine money from many different investors with similar investing goals to leverage greater results. Okay, so the money in a fund can be invested in stocks, bonds, or a combination of both. And like I said, these mutual funds are most of your 401ks and IRAs are probably going into mutual funds because the money gets spread out so far that they are less susceptible to the ups and downs of the market or the ups and downs of individual companies rather. Okay, so a pro of a mutual fund is kind of what I just said. They diversify your investment over multiple stocks and bonds and leave you less susceptible. And not a single mutual fund has gone bankrupt since 1940. That is 80 years without a single mutual fund going bankrupt. That is insane. That is a very safe bet. Now, it might not gain it might lose value, potentially over time, but they have never gone bankrupt, which is just insane. But you do have to be careful. One of the cons is that you do have to be careful of all sorts of fees and expenses that go into operating these mutual funds. So just be aware of that if that's something that you're looking to. Okay, now I'm going to speak for the next 3 minutes here on Pennsylvania specific retirement pension because that's where I am and that's what I know. Okay. But a pension plan in general is basically just a company or an employer promises to provide a certain monthly income to people who retire from that company for life. That amount is usually based off contributions from both the employer and the employee. And there's a factor of how many years they've worked with the company for as well. Over time, these are safe investments for the employee because you don't assume any of the risks of where of what's going on with that. The only thing that you lose is the money that you're putting into the pension. Okay. Which obviously is bad if the pension fails. But it's the contributions to that pension are made by either the employer or the employee, often both. And the investment portfolio then is managed by other investment professionals. And this is what I was saying at the beginning, at least I think I said it, but when I got my job here in Pennsylvania, they said you have to sign up for one of these two options in your pension plan. It's either a TF or a TE. And at the time I was like, I guess I'm not going to give as much money because we were still single. My wife wasn't working yet. So we were still based on my income alone. But it's something to consider. So, with pension plans, at least like I said, in Pennsylvania, you can look up this information with whatever state that you're in. It is public knowledge. It is available, but you can retire with 35 years of experience, regardless of your age in Pennsylvania, which is pretty cool because that means that if you get your job right out of college and you are 22 years old and you work for 35 years, then you retire with full benefits at the age of 57, and you can go on, you can do your retirement career then. So it's just something to look into and to consider. And I apologize for if you are watching, my slides are being really slow right now, but like I said, the TE and TF contributions, it just determines how much you're putting in now, which is going to determine how much you make in retirement, right? So just figure that out, look at what you want to do, and just consider that when you get your first career. Okay. If you are like, I don't want to even think about investing, then maybe putting more money into your pension when you start is good, because then you'll have more coming out when you retire. But if you are like me and you put less into your pension, then the burden is kind of on you to make sure that you are doing other things for your retirement as well. One of those other things that you can do as a employee of a nonprofit is a 403B. This is kind of like a 401k, but it's for nonprofits. Basically almost identical, actually. The good thing about 401bs and other investment and other retirement accounts is that they are tax exempt. Okay. So you can put in up to, for the 403b as of the year 2020, you can put in $19,500 of pre-tax money. So the government hasn't taken any of that money out of your paycheck yet. It's before you even get the cash from your paycheck, it goes into that account. Okay. The downside is that if you do retire at 57 years old, you can't withdraw this money until you're 59 and a half years old. So you do have to make up that those couple of years there, but 403bs are a great option. And then if you are, you say, I'm a teacher right now and I'm enjoying it right now, but like there's something in the back of my head that says I might not be doing this for forever, then a 457b might be something for you to look into. 457bs are kind of like 403bs, but if you leave your job, you can start taking money out of that retirement account without penalty. Okay. So this, like I said, this is a good option if you are thinking early or partial retirement from your career. Look into 457b. The last main one is an IRA. So again, with most school employers, you don't have options for 401ks. Those are through private companies, but you do have the ability to set up an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. Okay. So if your employer doesn't match for your 403b, then this is something that you might consider because you have total control over this. Then you have total control over the investment options that you want in your IRA. You can look for IRAs that have lower fee options than 403bs and 457bs. And it's individual. It's not attached to your employer, right? It is yours. It is individually yours. Okay. The downside is that you can only put in $6,000 a year into this pre-tax, as compared to the 403b was 19,500. So you can't put as much into this, but it is something that is individually yours. And then if you ever hear the term Roth, all that means is that you're putting money into your investment account or your retirement account. That is money that you received after the government already took tax out of it. So this is what's called the tax is taken before you put the money into your retirement account. And this is really a good option if you are expecting to be in a higher tax bracket when you retire than you are now, because you've already paid the tax on that money. So that money keeps generating revenue based on that compound interest. In your Roth IRA, that money keeps generating revenue. And then when you take it out, you know exactly how much money you're taking out because it's already been taxed, right? With a general IRA, that money is taxed when you take it out. So you do have to be careful about that. But for that Roth IRA, when you retire and you start pulling that money out, you know exactly how much you got in there. You know exactly how much you have. So anything that is Roth, that's what that's talking about loosely. So man, I hope I covered a lot. I know I did. Hopefully some of that was mind shattering to you as it was for me when I was listening, when I was reading about it and learning about it and hearing about it. But just some final thoughts to wrap up here. One is, again, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to start that plan. Okay. Look into Jim Rohn's 70-10-10-10. Think about the ratio, right? 70% of your money going into your house, your car, your food, your clothing, everything that you're purchasing. 10% goes into savings, 10% goes into investing, and 10% goes giving it away, right? Find an organization that you want to support. If you're part of a church and you want to tithe 10%, I personally, we even include it in like birthday and Christmas gifts, right? That money is being given away. Okay. The 70-10-10-10, really like that one. My wife and I have started implementing weekly budget reviews, which has just been super helpful because it puts it front of mind every single week. Every single week, we look at where our money went. We talk about where it's going to go. We make a plan for the next month. We make a plan for the next couple of years. It's just really beneficial to have those weekly budget reviews. So if you're single, do it by yourself. If you're married or you're in a relationship, talk about maybe doing that with your significant other. Pay off your highest interest debt first. So if you, like I said, we went back to if you've got 4 or 5 loans and 2 of them are credit card loans, man, pay those credit cards off first. Cause sometimes those are, 20, almost 30% interest on those debts. So figure out how to pay those off first and then work your way down. Think about that snowball, right? The debt snowball, that you can continue to pay off debt with the money that was already going to debt. It just makes a lot of sense. Okay. The best thing that you can do is start. You don't need a perfect plan. You can adjust as you go. But if you keep telling yourself, oh, I'll get around to it, it takes so long for you to eventually get around to it. And by then, if you go back to that compound interest calculator that I talked about, if you put that $6,000 a year in for the first 7 years, at the end of those 30 years, it's the same amount of money as if you wait 7 years before you start. And then you have to keep doing it the rest of your life before you retire. So wherever you are right now, if you haven't started, start now. Your future self is going to thank you for it. And then last but not least, again, I am not a financial person. This is everything that I talked about here, I found on my own through books, through websites, through research. So make sure you do your own before, deciding what you want to do. If it makes you feel more comfortable, there are plenty of advisors that you can find, especially if you are a teacher. A lot of times there's some sort of advisor that has a connection to your school, that will help you set up that 403B, that will help you set up that 457B, and anything else that you need help with. So that's a good idea too, is to make sure you talk to that advisor. So hopefully that was useful information for you. I know, like I said, I probably beat the horse very dead now, but this was it was something that I had to figure out on my own. And I don't want that for you. I hope that this episode allowed you to go, wow, I haven't thought about that in this way, or, X, Y, and Z. But again, the overall goal being that this is something that is going to help you as take some stress off the money in the future so that you can be a better teacher, or you can now start having these conversations with kids. Because again, I don't think we've done a good enough job in the K-12 system of implementing some of this stuff. So that is going to be a wrap from me. Like I said, everything that I chatted about here is on our show notes page. If you go to jabadoo.com/show52, I will have links to the slides, to the compound interest calculator that you can play around with, to some of the other links that I chatted about. If you want to watch this video, those are going to be a link there on the show notes page, or you can go to jabadoo.com/TV. That will redirect you over to our YouTube page. And last but not least, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we do have a Facebook group that I would love for you to be a part of. If you go to jabadoo.com/group, that'll redirect you over to Facebook, and you can join in on the conversation that is happening outside of all of these episodes. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some value out of that. And I definitely enjoyed bringing it to you. So until next time, go teach. Thank you so much for listening to the Jabadoo Education Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more evidence-based strategies for improving your educational career, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can get the next episode as soon as it is released. If you think this information was beneficial and you think more teachers should hear it, the greatest compliment you can give us is to share this episode with a colleague, either through a text message, email, or social media. And last but not least, if you think more teachers need to hear more of what we are talking about, please go leave us a 5-star rating and review on your platform of choice, and that will simply let the algorithm know that you are finding value in this content, and it will help boost our show to the top of the list when people search for education shows. Thank you, I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next episode of the Jabadoo Education Podcast.